Hi, I'm McGurk, and I'm a biathlon and cross-country ski coach. I grew up in Canmore and the surrounding area, and basically every kid is baptized in one sport or the other. And I started out in hockey, cross-country skiing, I did cross-country running, track, all sorts of different types of sports. Cross-country skiing, though, always appealed to me. It was very, very difficult sport in terms of endurance, and that's what I really fell in love with. I have two younger brothers who are very, very heavily involved in sport when they were growing up. My brother was an amazing hockey player, and my brother, he started cross-country skiing and hockey, and in the end he settled on climbing. So, but yeah, we've always been a very, very active family, and most people would say very competitive too in all the little games that we play. So. My family has always been very supportive of my competitive career and also of my choice of becoming a coach. They know that it's what I love to do, and so my wife has been extremely supportive because it does require a lot of time on the road and a lot of calls at weird hours. It's not a 9-to-5 job by any means, and because of that, there's definitely a lot of interruptions throughout the day, throughout the evening. When I was racing competitively, there was a few times where I got injured or I'd be sick, and so usually when we're away on trips, if that happens, then we have the opportunity to kind of help out the team, so still be part of the event. And I always loved helping out my fellow competitors, so it was very, very rewarding, and being part of the team that would help them race. And so I thought, oh, maybe I'd try this as a career. That, and I loved sport, and so at the end of my career, when I was thinking of quitting, it was like, oh, what do I do next? And I always still wanted to continue with the sport, so coaching allows me to still cross-country ski and be in the sport that I love. When I became a coach for the Rocky Mountain Racers, which was the club that I raced for, we compete in both cross-country and biathlon. So although it was brand new to me, I've learned over the years how to coach biathlon, and actually I really, really enjoy it. It was a challenge at first as a newbie, but it's quite a complicated sport, and so I've had a lot of fun learning about all the different techniques in the shooting. My coaching philosophy that I've developed over the years is one of trying to create a complete individual. So in terms of the actual sport that I'm coaching, I try and work on all aspects, whether it's mental, physical, tactical, but also at the same time I want to make sure that the athletes achieve a good sport-life balance. I think that's missing from a lot of athletes these days. Everyone's a little bit too focused on the sport part, and unfortunately that does really affect the athletes. Usually if the athlete has another outlet on top of the sport, they're much happier and more well-rounded. Another part that we focus on is education as well. So one of the mandates of the club is to ensure that if athletes want to go to school, that we help support that endeavor. The work-life balance for coaches is always difficult. It was funny when I was going to the Calgary Sports Institute for my advanced coaching degree, how many coaches actually touched on that subject. It seemed to be coming up daily, and it's something that all coaches have problems striving for. And I'm still trying to figure out that balance myself. And I think I just have to really adhere to my own rules in terms of my work schedule. Over the years, I've cultivated my work ethic, and I've taken a lot from my coach that I grew up with. And I've realized that I have to portray what I'm asking my athletes to do. So if I'm not displaying those characteristics, why would they display them. So I try and work extremely hard, be on time, be really dedicated, be very technically proficient in what I do in all aspects of skiing and biathlon. So endurance sports, coaching endurance sports is it's quite interesting. Each sport really presents unique challenges. Obviously, for our sport, our athletes have to be able to race a whole wide range of distances. So something as short as 10K, something as long as 20. Biathlon is also very unusual because they have shooting bouts. And so depending on the length of the race, they might have 2 shooting bouts or they might have 4. And they have to be trained so that they can go hard with the skiing and then come in, calm down, focus, shoot well, and then all of a sudden ramp things back up again when they start skiing. So that dynamic, I don't think you see very often in any other sports. The elements that appeal to me in biathlon is definitely the transition between the skiing and the shooting. So it's combining 2 very, very, very different sports, and people can excel in cross-country skiing and shooting, but to have them combined and to make that mental switch at the right moment is critical. And so over the last little bit, I've really been trying to figure out new ways of coaching our athletes to really make that switch really smooth and not get caught up with everything else that's surrounding them. Most biathletes would say that they like the shooting aspect of biathlon. That's what usually hooks them. So good job, guys. I really like the work with the outfit. So coaching biathlon and cross country is my full-time job. I'm very lucky that I'm able to do this. Very, very privileged. I'm extremely lucky to work with a really talented group of kids. They are all really, really hardworking and dedicated to the sport. Some of the best moments that I have throughout the year is when they have jumped to that next level, when they've achieved a small personal goal, not necessarily winning a race or on the podium, but it's the smaller little victories of I've got that technique, or I've figured out how to do this corner. And there's a lot of times that they come to me after the race and say, oh, this is like the best race I've had because of all these things. Again, it's not to do with their final placing, but it just has to do with how they raced it, how they approached it. And that's some of the best times that I have, for sure. When we're getting ready for competitions, there's a lot of things that go on. So even before we arrive at the site or the venue in the weeks prior, we spend a lot of time trying to create race scenarios that are similar to what we're going to expect at whatever venue we're going to. Once we arrive there, again, we go and we check out the conditions of the courses, we test skis, we test wax. We spend a lot of time on the range shooting and then kind of looking at how the environmental factors affect the range, which is huge for biathlon. And it's something that the athletes, they need to be well versed in, because as the competition is going, these environmental factors change, and so they have to be able to make adjustments for it on the fly. For the coaches, I mean, we spend a lot of time dealing with ski testing, wax testing, to make sure our athletes have the best boards. And then again, we're also looking at the environmental factors so that as the race progresses, we can actually give feedback to the athletes before they hit the range, and so they kind of have a heads up of what to expect. One of the interesting things about the Hinton race was how quickly the environmental factors changed throughout that race. So we start out and it was a little windy, but then all of a sudden we had a snow squall come in, the visibility changed, the light changed, the fresh snow drastically alters how the skis run. So the athletes out there, I know they had a bit of a rough time, but it was interesting. Those that can adapt to those change and persevere had excellent races. So at that event, I had 3 athletes join us, Tatiana, Thomas, and Nate, and they're all going up there. It wasn't a super important race for them, but it was one of the races leading up to nationals. So we only get a few major races throughout the year. So this one was specifically set up for some good racing, some good biathlon racing, getting them specifically ready for the nationals that were happening here in Canmore. This is my first year working with Tatiana, and it's been a really fun experience. She brings a lot of energy to each of the training sessions. She's very dedicated, and she's always willing to learn. So it's been a huge season of growth, I think, for her, and I've had a lot of fun training.
It's amazing. I won today, so it's really reassuring that all your training is coming together. Everything you're doing is worth it. So it's super exciting.
I think that she had excellent results in Hinton. We were trying a couple new things that weekend, trying to make sure we had everything dialed in for nationals. And whenever you're doing that, there's always ups and downs depending on what's happening, and the weather was always a key factor in that. But I think she did extremely well. Had a lot of fun.
It's definitely progress for me, looking at where I started and being brand new to cross-country skiing to looking now, and competing in nationals. I'm hoping to do really well, and it's looking at where I've come and how far I've come, and what I'm doing now is it's my biggest success for me.
So it's a pretty amazing feeling when my athletes go out and either podium or they achieve their personal bests. They work so hard throughout the year. I really do torture them a lot, and so when they come back and after the race, they come in the wax room or we're on the side of the trail, and it's a really hard feeling to describe, but we're both really happy. I'm always really excited when they make that next jump to the next level.
Usually after the race, the coach will come by with his notebook. They write down a lot of the information that they got during the race, such as splits and where you're making time or losing time, and your hits and where your misses were on the target and what they noticed. So usually you'll just debrief with the coach. You'll run through the whole race, tell him, what you thought you did well, where you need to work on, and run it past him and see if he has the same ideas. And then from there, you should just plan what you're going to do for the next week. Maybe, you had some trouble with an attack on a certain hill, so the next week you'll just work on steep hills, just sprinting them really hard, just so you can get them in the future.
On the flip side to the best moments, obviously not everyone can stand at the top of the podium. So we have bad days as well. Sometimes we don't hit the wax, or there's a lot of different reasons. So it's never a great feeling, but usually we really focus on the lead up and the little tiny things throughout the race. We analyze what went right, what went wrong, and usually we look at any day that we didn't perform as well as just a teaching exercise, and we move on from that. So a typical day for me usually involves me rolling out of bed around 7, going to have a pretty nice little breakfast at home, and then driving up to the Nordic Center. And usually I'm there half an hour to an hour before the athletes, depending on what we're doing, because I have to set up and make sure that the training venue is safe, and make sure that I'm able to think through the session that we're doing, make sure it's going to flow and that we can get as much crammed into one session as possible. Although that I see these guys almost every day throughout a year, each minute is precious. So. For the athletes training, it's a full year program. Basically, we will start up in May. Throughout the summer, we are on the trails all over the place. We're hitting mountains, we're mountain biking, we're kayaking, we're ski walking, we're mountain biking. We do a lot of roller skiing throughout the year. As soon as the snow flies, we are bouncing around the country trying to find it, try and get some early skiing in. Around the end of November is when the race season kicks off, and after that it's pretty full tilt to the end of March. And then we let those guys go and have fun in April. And interesting enough, basically they go out and do the exact same thing that they do all year long. They're running up mountains, skiing. They just don't have me hanging around yelling at them the entire time. So, guys, good job, up, up, up. So today we're going to do a little ski walking. So throughout the year we're always trying to find some sort of activity that will help, that mimics cross-country skiing and biathlon to help practice, obviously. Today, ski walking, they'll be coming up this hill using their classic poles, and it really mimics the diagonal stride in the classic technique of cross-country skiing. So with our group, we usually try and keep our group small, so this allows us to have a really nice coach-to-athlete ratio. This allows us to get in and do a lot more intensive individualized sessions with our athletes. Anytime that you're out there and you're being active, every movement should be kind of under control. They need to be body aware, and in the end that helps translate to better technique and a better racer altogether. Good job, guys. Remember those arms, right? Finish those arms, finish those kicks. Up, up, up. Sarah, pull that elbow back, pull that elbow back.
My name is Sarah McLean and I'm a cross-country skier. And my coach is Luke McGurk.
Head up there, Sarah. There you go, good job. Good job with those elbows. Good job finishing the hands. Up, up, up.
Today we are doing ski walking, which helps us out when there's not enough snow for us to ski on. We can still, it mimics the technique that we'd want to be working on if we are on snow. So it lets us continue to work and perfect our technique during the summer.
So good job, guys. I really like the work with the elbow. As we've talked about before, it's really important. Good finish with the hands. Remember, the finishing with the hands means that you're going to finish with the legs. The arms dictate the legs, right?
My favorite thing about Luke is that sometimes as an athlete you tend to think you're invincible, and if you're tired or sick you still think, oh, I can go to training, I'll be fine. Luke is very good at looking past that and realizing that you're not okay to train today and sending you home or adjusting training as necessary to fit how you're doing that day.
Good job, Sarah. Remember those elbows, okay? Pull through. There we are. Good job finishing those hands. Up, up, up. Good job, Nick. Good job with those feet.
My name is Nicholas Bardak and I am a cross-country skier. My coach is Luke McGurk and I ski with Rocky Mountain Racers. I like that Luke always tries to make a connection with his athletes and always does his best to make sure all his athletes are able to get the best training experience possible.
Really good job, guys. Nice to see that all the hard work is paying off. It's really nice to see the good motion with the arms. And the feet are looking great, so I'm really excited to see what we can do with the next intensity session. See how that translates. One of the interesting things about being a coach is that you're really forced to learn a lot of new skills really, really quickly. And for me, communication was one of those key things. So I've always learned a certain way, but now I've had to learn to say the same thing a variety of different ways and use different methods to teach each of my athletes, because no two athletes learn the same way. So that's been very, very interesting. We'll dictate where your upper body is, and we don't want you too far forward. Nicholas, good job with finishing and where you're landing on your foot. So we're no longer landing on that heel and you're no longer having to rock up, okay? So that's good, it's looking nice and smooth. Good job. One of the things that I think makes me a little different than most of the biathlon coaches out there, and they're all great, I've had a chance to work with so many of them, is that I come from a cross-country ski background. So when we're out there, my focus is not only on the shooting, but I spend a lot of time on ski technique and the ski physiology. And I think that, that is a little bit different than maybe a lot of traditional programs where a lot is focused a little bit more on the shooting aspect of biathlon. The one thing that I've always wanted to maintain through all my coaching is I've always wanted to create a really positive training environment for all my athletes. And we focus so much on the technical and physiology, making sure everything's all done, but at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I impart my enthusiasm for the sport and that these guys continue on through life. Cross-country skiing, biathlon, whatever sport, but as long as they're having fun and being active, that's what I want to make sure gets passed on.